Well, welcome back to Donington Park, everybody. We've got the second GT Cup race of the championship season coming up for you shortly, the pit stop race. However, we had the sprint race earlier on today, so let's look back at some of the highlights from race one of the season. So the red lights are on the gantry. It is a 25-minute sprint race. Richard Neary gets his foot down from pole position and is on the inside line heading up towards Redgate Corner, but Tom Rawlings in the Lamborghini was not that far away from him. They turn in and it looks as though it's Seamus Jennings that slots himself through into third position. Warren Gilbert's there in fourth place. And is the reigning champion going to squeeze his way through? He's looking for the inside line, heading in towards the braking area for the Robert chicane. See the nose of the Lamborghini dip. Through goes Paul Bailey. And into the pit lane, I'm afraid. That's Tom Rawlings that's in. Not quite sure what the problem is with the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini. Over the start-finish line they come. Jay Shepherd trying to work his way alongside. Is he going to get ahead of the car of Seamus Jennings? He's alongside. He's trying rather around the outside at Redgate Corner to make it stick. So Seamus Jennings losing the place. Through goes Jay Shepherd. Keith Bush has gone through, and now this could be the opportunity for Warren Gilbert to pick the pocket of Paul Bailey as they struggle to get past the back marker. Just met the back marker in the wrong place. Can Warren Gilbert prise the door open? Yes, he gains a place. Also dives through on Doc Bush as well. Paul Bailey follows him through. Now what Warren Gilbert was trying to do there was get a car between him and Paul Bailey. Didn't quite happen in the end because Paul Bailey also took the opportunity to squeeze past the Porsche. So the car just went beyond the red and white painted curb there onto the green section. That may well be picked up on by race control. So he's treading a fine tight rope as Paul Bailey then runs wide, going in towards the old hairpin and gifts the place to Warren Gilbert as over the start finish line to win round one of the 2024 GT Cup Championship comes Richard Neary at the wheel of the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes. So here comes Jay Shepherd towards the checkered flag. Warren Gilbert trying to squeeze his way through and past Charles Dawson. So there's Jay Shepherd in the Lotus. Here comes Seamus Jennings to finish in third place. And fourth place on the line. Is Paul Bailey just about going to get there with the extra grunt in the GTO car? Yes, he does. He just goes through, I think, and ahead of Warren Gilbert. Great to see the drivers celebrating for the first time this season on the podium. Richard Neary claiming the win in Group GTO. Seamus Jennings was first home in Group GT3. Warren Gilbert claimed top honours in Group GTC. And for Fossetti Motorsport, it was first and second in Group GTH. Mikey Porter claiming the win. Rihanna O'Meara Hunt finishing second for the team. We've got a new driving standards observer in the GT Cup Championship for 2024. Hugely experienced racing driver as well. We managed to catch up with Johnny Mullen before the season got underway.
Johnny, you're more than familiar with GT Cup, having raced in it in the past, but for 2024 you join the team in a different role. You're the driving standards officer for this year.
I know it sounds very formal, doesn't it, Mark? Hannah contacted me. I can't remember if it was very late in 2023 or very early in 2024, and just asked me if I'd be interested. And initially I gave it some thought, because everyone keeps saying to me, which is slightly insulting, poacher term gamekeeper, as if I somehow lived in the steward's room with the race director. I don't remember having that many incidents that got me into too much trouble, but obviously it's going to be quite cool to return to the GT Cup in a completely different capacity. We've raced in it before, I've raced in it before, with a reasonable amount of success in the past, and I don't remember the driving standards being that bad. In fact, I think they were very, very good, so it'd be interesting to see how busy I am this year, but hopefully not too busy.
So this new role that you're in then, you'll be working together with the Butte Motorsport and GT Cup team alongside the clerk of the course, monitoring what's going out on track.
Yes, I think I'm there in basically almost as a referee, in the capacity to give a driver's insight into various different incidents that may or may not happen. Some are going to be very, very clear cut, overtaking under yellows or whatever, that you don't really need me for something like that. I suspect I'll be brought into play a bit more when it's drivers' incidents between two drivers, potentially on the last lap going for the lead of class or overall lead, and that's maybe when I might be able to give a little bit of input into somebody that's done something that may not look on the surface like he was outrageously trying to have the other person off, but as a driver I'll probably have a better idea of his mindset at that time, because that would have probably been what I would have been thinking as well.
The great thing is, I suppose, with this new role that you're in, that you can draw on that enormous amount of experience that you have as a professional racing driver for many years, racing at the very top level at Le Mans and winning your class at the Rolex Daytona 24 Hours. You can draw on all of that to deliver hopefully a consistent arrangement.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head there, Mark. Consistency, I think, is key. Certainly as a driver on the receiving end of various different rules and regulations, I think if you see consistency as a driver being, it may be hard but fair and consistently applied, I think that will be enough for most drivers to just, once they, maybe not at that moment, in the heat of the moment, but certainly when they go away and they'll say, right, you know what, that was fair. I've had that happen with me at the time. I maybe thought they were being a bit harsh, and then I look back the next day and I think, you know what, that was pretty fair in terms of how they judged it. And if they do it for everybody the same, then actually there should be no questions.
You look at the GT Cup entry list for this season, and yes, whilst the cars have moved on enormously since the early days of GT3 when you'd have been racing in machinery like that, you know, it's still evolving all of the time, motorsport, and some of the young talent that we've got in the entry list for this season looks astonishing.
Oh, it looks fantastic. I turned up on today's test day and I'm just walking up the paddock and seeing all the trucks that are out there, and they haven't even got the full complement of everyone that's going to be racing here at the first round. There's probably only 2/3 of the teams here testing today, and it looks really, really impressive. GT Cup's always been pretty good like that, and it's been going from strength to strength in the last sort of 2, 3, 4 years. I think they've got a really good championship here, and the fact that they can attract young drivers in who see this as a platform to then move on, maybe British GT, but probably more going into international GT racing of some sort, and potentially even getting paid as either a driver coach or even getting paid as a factory driver. So drivers coming into this with that in mind really shows how this championship has progressed. Along with that, in terms of my job, probably will make my job slightly harder, because you're going to have sort of young, really hungry drivers out there taking no prisoners, and that in itself will be quite a challenge, but one that I'm really looking forward to.
Just like a young Johnny Mullen was some years ago.
Oh my God, I hope I don't come across anyone similar to me in my early 20s. I was a little bit out of control at that point. It was like if I wasn't leading after the first lap, I'd crash trying to attempt to take the lead. So definitely don't want anyone like myself in it.
What are you most looking forward to? But equally as much, there's the flip side of that, as you said, because you are the referee. What are you least looking forward to?
What am I least looking forward to? I think I'm least looking forward to dealing with someone when I'm trying, and I know I will make every attempt to be fair and consistent, as I mentioned before, and have that person maybe not recognise that after the dust has settled, and maybe hold that against me, because I definitely won't be bearing a grudge for anybody. That's something I don't want to make enemies. Nobody does. So I hope that doesn't happen. I'm pretty confident that they'll see that I may not even be hard, but I'll be fair and consistent. I'm hoping that. And in terms of what I'm most looking forward to is being able to give David Brabham a penalty for something or other, maybe getting in the wrong side of the car at the wrong time or something like that, because we go way back. We were teammates together back in the day, raced at Sebring 12 hours together and everything else. So on a serious note, it's great to see people of his calibre in this championship, albeit at a similar stage in his career to where mine is. And it'll be nice to see him going up against the young guns and seeing how that all pans out. And I'll just be enjoying watching the racing, because GT Cup always brings great racing.
Great to hear from Johnny and all of the experience that he can bring into the new role. But we've also got new drivers on the grid for 2024. We managed to catch up with the all-female team. Jodie Sloss is partnered up by Rihanna O'Meara Hunt for 2024. We had a quick chat to them.
Jodie, Rihanna, welcome along to GT Cup 2024. For you, Jodie, you're familiar with the championship. We've seen you out it in the past, but for 2024, it's a new teammate, it's a new car, and it's a new team.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I was in GT Cup, it was an all-female lineup then as well. So when I was presented with this opportunity, I was actually really excited, because this really screams diversity as well. We're with a really strong team, and first time I've actually been with Aston Martin. So new car to learn as well, but it's nice to be back on the grid for GT Cup.
Rihanna, welcome along to GT Cup. Your first sample of the new championship, but of course for you it's also quite a heavy learning year with familiarity with the car, but the team, but for you also trying to learn the tracks this year.
Yeah, I mean, I did that in America as well, so every track I went to in America was new on the weekend. So I've got a little bit of experience about learning the track quite quick, which helps for this year for sure. I've moved myself over from New Zealand, so it was a big move on Sunday, so I've been here about 3 days. But no, I'm really looking forward to being in the UK and doing the championship with Fossetti and with Jodie.
Fossetti, a new team as well. You know, they're only
Yeah.
3 months old, so there's been
It's crazy.
there's been a lot of work just to build the team up ready for the start of 2024.
Yeah, I think the good thing about Forsetti is though everyone that's involved has so much history with Aston Martin, and they've all come together to make this very good support system for especially me and Ree into this. So it's good.
Rianne, I'll come back to you again. Jodie was briefly mentioning about sim work there as well. You look at the circuits that we visit in GT Cup and look at the Aston Martin. Those are all available on certain sim packages. Is that time that you're doing to make sure that you're up and running and ready? Lots of sim time?
Yeah, for sure. So before I came here, I only did about an hour or so just because it was a bit of a squeeze to get in. But for the championship, I plan to do a lot of sim work before events, and don't waste that first session just learning a track. So it'll be a bit different to last year because last year I didn't get to do any sim stuff. So I'm hoping that's going to be a big improvement.
Final question, same question to both of you. Jodie, you know how competitive Group GTH is,
Yeah.
which is what you'll be in this year. What are you wanting to achieve this year? Do you think that the Group GTH Championship and overall Championship are possibilities for you?
Yeah, certainly. I think with this good pairing as well, for me it's going to be quite interesting because this is the first time I've gone back into GT4 from like cup cars. So I think just seeing how much I've progressed over the last few seasons from a very unique starting block into motorsports is going to be really valuable for me. But I think we work very well. We have very similar techniques, and I think with the team that's behind us, we're going to grow very quickly. So I don't see why great results can't come out of this.
You'll have seen, Rihanna, that the GT4 cars that run in Group GTH up and down the pit lane today, there's a lot of them. It's a competitive class as well.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Coming off the back of last year, getting those 2 wins, I think, we got a good team with Fossetti behind us. So, we're going to be pushing for wins and podiums most races, and we'll see how we go.
So let's have a look at the Donington Park circuit. It's centrally located in the East Midlands on the Leicestershire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire border. We're racing this weekend on the Donington Park National Circuit, which is around about 2 miles long. It's split into 3 sectors and has 9 separate corners, and this circuit can trace its roots back to the pre-war period. So as the cars head off the start line at Donington Park, they get to Redgate, the first corner, and from there it's down through the daunting Craner curves all the way to the lowest point of the circuit, the old hairpin. From there they climb uphill, round through Coppice, and the final sector, short one, through the right and the left flick at the Roberts chicane. ...2024. We also had a brilliant 2023 championship. So whilst we're waiting for the cars to come onto the grid, let's look back at some of the highlights from last year's championship.
Hello and welcome to the 2023 season opener of the GT Cup Championship here at Donington Park.
The lights go out. The Audi has the inside line. It's being matched for pace by the McLaren. The drivers left as they head up towards the braking area for Redgate corner, but it's going to be Morgan Tilbrook that leads the way. Over the start-finish line goes Marcus Clutton, partnered up with Morgan Tilbrook. They claim the first pit stop race win of the season. Graham Tilley and Senan Fielding finished second overall and scoop up top honours in Group GTO, and it's Lucky Kieran, you and Hankey that come through to finish in 3rd place.
It was a crazy race, loads of different things going on there.
Short, his father will be watching on. There'll be tears in his eyes, I know that for sure. The fingernails have gone, the fingers have gone. I'd imagine the hand has gone now, and he's down to the wrist, if not the elbow, with tension. But Morgan Short comes through in the Mosler to win overall in the 6th round of the 2023 GT Cup Championship. Jordan Albert and Michael Broadhurst, who loses a further place. Then the door is open, which allows Phil Keane to squeeze his way through, and Michael Broadhurst loses a further place. Group GTH Mercedes that's going to finish second overall in this race. And it looks as though he has made it stick. Mikey Broadhurst tries to fight back as they come in towards the final corner, but can't quite do it. And Phil Keane at the final corner has snuck through to claim the win in Group GTH. You can see the reaction down there in the pits. And what a brilliant steal that was for the team. They look absolutely delighted with that.
Thank you to all the teams, drivers, everyone here at the GT Cup Championship, and I'm sure the 2024 season will be absolutely jam-packed like it has been this year. So we'll see you then.
Some great memories of a fantastic 2023 championship season, but everybody will now be fully focused forwards to what's going on in 2024. The cars leaving the pit lane on their out lap, ready to line up on the grid in advance of our first pit stop race of the 2024 championship season. The way it works for the pit stop race is that it's a 50-minute race and there are two separate pit windows. So if you are a car that runs in Group GTO or Group GT3 or Group GTC, your pit window is between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race. That's where the cars have to come into the pits and change their drivers. Now, subject to what the driver pairing is, if it's a sporting combination or a pro sporting combination, or it's got a pro in it, that dictates how long the car has to remain stationary in the pit lane. And you add to that in subsequent races any success seconds. We have no success seconds to worry about because it's the first pit stop race of the season. It's only when we get to tomorrow that we have extra seconds then to worry about. And if you're a car that runs in Group GTH, in other words, you're a Group GT4 car, GT4 specification car, your pit window is between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race. That's when they will come into the pits today. That changes for tomorrow because the GTH cars will come in first tomorrow and the others will come in second. But for today, GTO, GT3, GTC, 24th to 29th minute of the race. And for today, Group GTH, 29th to the 35th minute of the race. The way it also works is that if you're a sporting combination, your minimum time in the pit lane stationary is 60 seconds, 60 seconds. If you have a pro sporting driver with you, so a sporting driver, two hams in reality, if you've got a pro sporting driver, which you classify as maybe a silver in other categories, then they have to be in the pit lane area for 80 seconds, so an extra 20 seconds longer. But if you've got a pro in the car, then you have to stay in the pit lane for an extra 5 seconds on top of that, 85 seconds in total if you've got a pro driver in the car. So it does mean that certainly at the start of the race, those that have got AMAM combinations want to try and build an advantage because they know, looking over their shoulders in the second part of the race, that they're going to have the pros coming up. So it does make it really, really, really interesting. And most of the cars from pit in to pit out, if you drive down the pit lane here at Donington Park at the pit lane speed limit, that will take you an extra 18 seconds. So the minimum from a car coming into the pits to going out should be 78 in reality, 60 seconds stationary, and the other 18 is to drive from one end of the pit lane to the other. So we know who the starting drivers are for this one as well. When we give you the grid, which we'll do when they're on their formation lap, we'll also tell you the starting driver behind the wheel of the car. They've all been notified by the teams to the GT Cup Championship, and we look forward to seeing how this first race of the season unfolds. Remember, Paul Bailey, reigning champion, is on the grid. Richard Neary, a champion from 2021, is on the grid. You look back to the 2018 champion, Chris Murphy, is on the grid. So we've got 3 former overall champions on the grid, plus plenty of historic individual group champions. So, you know, the likes of Warren Gilbert has secured top honours in Group GTC. We've got the winning drivers from Group GTH last year, Stephen Walton and Chris Hart, all on the grid as well. So we'll wait and see as to what may unfold. So the countdown board's continuing. The last few members of crew just leaving the grid now with their slave batteries. They'll all be, as you can see, with the headsets on as well, because it's all pit-to-car radio as well, so the driver's continually in communication with the team, backwards and forwards. And we can also see that the Radical RXC has joined the grid for this one. We know there was an oil pump belt failure on that car earlier on, but the number 99 Radical, because it didn't set a lap time in the race earlier on, starts off the back of the grid, because this grid is based on the fastest lap times from the sprint race earlier on. And if you're wondering why earlier on as well, because we didn't know at the time why the Lamborghini had retired in the hands of Tom Rawlings, that was because he hadn't got the seat insert in the car, so his legs were sat not quite where he wanted to, and ended up with a dead leg, and he couldn't feel whether his foot was on the brake or not. So for safety reasons, he retired the car. That starts from the outside of the front row of the grid. We should be able to give you the grid then. It looks as though Jay Shepherd in the Lotus is starting from the pit lane, so he will be having to carve his way through the field. But let's give you the grid then for the first pit stop race of the season. Ian Loggy starts in the Mercedes on pole position, and it's Charlotte Gilbert in the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini that lies up alongside. Row 2 of the grid, Seamus Jennings starts in the number 33 Porsche, but then there'll be a gap alongside where Jay Shepherd should have been. We could see his car was in the pit lane. Row 3 of the grid, it is number 3, which is Warren Gilbert, and he's got the reigning champion, number 1 Paul Bailey, alongside. He will hand over to ex-Formula 1 driver David Brabham later on. And row 4 of the grid, it's Miles Rudman in the Porsche alongside the number 9 Aston Martin, which is started by Matthew Higgins in this race. Row 5 of the grid, the sister car from Forsetti Motorsport, the number 10 Aston Martin, is started by Jody Sloss, and alongside is 72 Chris Murphy. And it's number 75, the Porsche of Doc Bush, that lines up alongside Charles Dawson in the Team Parker Racing Mercedes on row number 6. Row 7, the first of the Morpheus Racing cars, is started by Stephen Walton, and for company he's got the Paddock Motorsport McLaren, which is in the hands of Jake Poole for the first part of the race. And row 8 of the grid, having his 100th race in a Ginetta, Leona Theobald had her 50th earlier on today. It's James Townsend that starts in the Ginetta alongside number 96 John Curry, who has had issues with the handling of the car in race number 1. Hopefully they've sorted it for race number 2. And the final row of the grid, car number 370, started by Rupert Williams, making his debut in the GT Cup. He's only raced Citroen C1s before. He's in a McLaren 570S for this. Jolt Racing, a new team. Looking forward to see how they get on this season. And off the back of the grid, watch out for it, returning to the championship, Jensen Lum, the number 99 car, who he shares with multiple Radical Stout champion and local man Steve Burgess, who resides just down the road at Nottingham. So Jensen Lund will start that car. So the lights are off on the safety car. We're about to get our first pit stop race of the 2024 GT Cup season underway, with a Mercedes and a Lamborghini on the front row of the grid. A Group GTO Mercedes, a Group GTC Lamborghini. The red lights are on the gantry, and 50 minutes of pit stop race. We're about to go green here, and it's a rocket of a start from Ian Loggy, who has already got the jump on on Charlotte Gilbert as they head up towards Redgate Corner for the first time. Seamus Jennings looking to slot in into 3rd position. And can Miles Rudman make it to 4th by the look of things? He was trying to get himself alongside Paul Bailey's Lamborghini, and I think he might have done it. In fact, Miles Rudman may well be up into 3rd because he's running wheel to wheel with Seamus Jennings, but backs out of it and slots the Group GTC Porsche back into 4th behind the GT3 car. Watch out for Jensen Lund at the wheel of the Radical. Jensen returning to the championship, having taken a sabbatical last year. His car very similarly liveried to the Top Cats Racing Lamborghinis, with its sort of pink and purple and yellow livery to it. So watch out for that Radical carving its way through the order. But the top two just getting away, as we've got Porsche and Lamborghini fighting over at the moment what will be 3rd, 4th and 5th position. And then the first of the Group GTH cars is next up, which by the look of things is number 10 Jody Sloss, who's got herself ahead of Matthew Higgins in the early stages for top honours and bragging rights in the Forsetti garage. Paul Bailey dives up the inside of Miles Rudman, takes the place away from the Group GTC Porsche. The 3 times legend champion, though, tries to fight back alongside the overall GT Cup champion from last year, but in a straight line the GTO Lamborghini was always going to have the advantage. And look, not that far behind him is already Jensen Lund, making brilliant progress at the wheel of the Radical. Paul Bailey ran a little bit wide at Redgate. That allows Miles Rudman to try and pick his pocket once more, but the Lamborghini just has enough grunt to pull away from the Cup spec Porsche. So the battle's still continuing in the early stages of this one. A long, long way to go yet. We're not even 2 minutes into the race, and we've already had some brilliant wheel-to-wheel action. Ian Loggy jumping away in the lead of the race. He was 1¼ seconds up the road. The thundering noise of the Mercedes engine, the normally aspirated Merc, working its way up towards Coppice Corner. So one good thing I love about sports car racing is just the different noises. Every car has a different soundtrack. There's the early stage Group GTH leading car, GT4 spec car, the Aston Martin of Forsetti Motorsport, who claimed a 1-2 earlier on, but it was the opposite way round. It was the black car with the Dalo green flashes that claimed the win in Group GTH earlier on. As Jensen Lund dives up the inside, gains another place. Now Jensen Lund started, bearing in mind they've only just completed 2 laps, he started in 18th position in the Group GTO Radical. Well, Jensen Lund is now up to 7th place at this stage. He's still 3rd in Group GTO, so of course every time he gets past another car, the next car becomes harder to pass, because therefore it's quicker. So he should pick off Jody Sloss, one would have thought, possibly down through the Craner curves. Or is he just going to wait until in a straight line he can work his way past on the run up towards McLean's Corner? Beautiful looking car, the Radical RXC. In a straight line, should have the grunt and try and ease his way through and past the Group GTH Aston Martin. Can he do it before McLean's corner? Nope, still just sits behind for the moment. So Jensen partnered up with Steve Burgess and goes through on the run in towards Coppice corner. So Jensen then up the inside at Coppice, gets the car stopped, gets it apexed, and then gets off the corner cleanly and will pull away from Jody Sloss, who was racing Porsches last year in the Porsche 911 Challenge, having previously competed in GT Cup in a McLaren a season or so ago. But certainly herself and her co-driver for this season, which is Rihanna O'Meara Hunt, the Kiwi, I think are going to be very, very strong in Group GTH. From what I've seen from them already so far this weekend, very, very strong pairing. One to watch out for, I think, over the course of the 2024 Championship season. So another place gain for Jensen Lunn. That now moves him from 18th up to 6th in the race. Remember, all of these cars that are running at the sharp end, so anything other than the GT4 car, i.e. those in Group GTH, all pit between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race. So if you're watching the clock at the top of the screen, that's when there's between 26 and 21 minutes remaining of the race. All of the GT4 spec cars, those in Group GTH, will pit with, if you look at the countdown timer at the top of the screen, with between 21 and 15 minutes remaining in the race. So they pit later today, but they do pit earlier in tomorrow's pit stop race. That's the way it works over a weekend. So 45 minutes to go. Paul Bailey still being shadowed by Miles Rudman. God, the speed that Miles Rudman could carry through the Robert chicane there relative to the Lamborghini. He really closed up. Now, Miles Rudman doesn't have a great deal of experience driving big, powerful sports cars on track. All the little pocket rocket, the motorcycle engine legends, for which he was 3 times a champion. And it's difficult to be a champion in the Legends. It's a very competitive series. Well, to be a 3 times champion goes to show what a good driver Miles Rudman is, and he's adapted to the Porsche very quickly indeed. So out of the old hairpin. Of course, he's giving away a few horsepower and a bit of aero to the Lamborghini that lies ahead. But he's still not really losing ground. Over the course of a lap, the Lamborghini puts together the lap time very differently to the Porsche, but they are pretty evenly matched, the pair, at the moment. So there goes the reigning champion, proudly carrying the number 1, Paul Bailey. So in the Lamborghini for this weekend, we're hoping we'll see him back out in the Brabham at some point, the BT62. And of course, we are as yet to see behind the wheel of the car in anything other than possibly free practice, where he turned a few laps this morning. David Brabham, who's going to take over that Lamborghini. David Brabham, who is a multiple champion, not just in sports cars, but British Formula 3 champion, wasn't he, some years ago, David Brabham. 2 Morpheus Racing cars have got themselves together. The livery looks very, very similar, but you can tell the difference by the front wings on the car. If it's got the light green front wings to it, then that means that it is the number 69 car. If it's got the silver front wings, then it's the 96 car. That's the best way to tell them apart when they're heading towards you. Other than that, the livery is pretty much identical on them. And the 2 of them are match for pace, which does suggest that the handling problems that John Curry was having in qualifying and in race 1 have been sorted by the team. He was talking to me earlier on and said it was fine yesterday, but this morning he was 2.5 seconds slower for no obvious reason. He just said the car just wanted to try and snap away, even through Schwantz Curve, which is pretty much flat in a GT4 car without any issues at all. He said even through there it was just moving around on him and was, I think, just unnerving, really. He wouldn't give the driver the confidence to push. Oh, problems for Jensen Lunn, who's stopped out on circuit at Coppice corner, and the Radical that had worked its way so well through the order, I'm afraid, has stopped, and it has stopped in a very inconvenient place, right on the brow at Coppice corner. Now, if Jensen is going to try and refire the car, it'd be wise to do it quickly, but if he can't, he might just need to roll off the brakes and let the car roll downhill on towards the grass. Otherwise, localised yellows will be replaced potentially by a safety car. If the car's got an issue with the drivetrain, there's nothing you can do. He's stuck there and he can't move it. But if there is any possibility of getting the car rolling, let it go backwards downhill on the grass. Try and park it up against the wall. But I think with the car stricken there and it's not moving, it does look as though we're going to go safety car. And that's going to undo some of the hard work that Ian Loggy had been looking to do, because remember, the car that leads is a sporting pairing, 2 AM drivers together, And ideally, what Ian Loggie and Richard Neary wanted to do was it go green all the way through the first section so they could build an advantage, build a bit of a gap, and then come the pit stops, when they have to stop for less time than some of the other cars, they can further increase that gap and then have that gap eroded away when the pros jump on board. But a safety car is not ideal, suboptimal, you could say. So the BMW electric safety car guiding them around the circuit. Shouldn't hopefully take too long to get Jensen Lund's car out of the way, but if it is an issue with an actuator in the gearbox or something like that, so that it's locked in a gear and there's nothing Jensen can do to get a neutral out of it, then it may well mean that that car can't be towed away. I hope that is not the case. And such a shame that car that couldn't compete in race number 1 is the first retiree in race number 2. Well, right, that's good news. That is good news. So the marshals have managed to get the car in a neutral with the assistance of Jensen Lund. And I'm going to push the car onto the grass there, hopefully right up against the barriers on the run in towards Coppice Corner. There might be a bit of 3-point turn about it to try and make sure it's parallel to the barriers, but a brilliant job again done by the marshals to get that car out of harm's way. Now we'll probably have this lap certainly, and maybe one more behind the safety car, because we haven't really got the crocodile formed behind the safety car. We've still got marshals the wrong side of the barriers, so I think we're going to have at least one further lap behind the safety car before we go green. And of course the clock still continues to tick. There's no pit window open as yet, so there's still a long way to go before the pit window opens. 14 minutes plus a bit of change before anybody could come into the pit for a regulatory pit stop. And then let me just guide you through the amount of seconds that they need to remain stationary. So Ian Loggie leads the race. That car, the Mercedes, will be stationary for 60 seconds come the pit stops. Second in the race is Charlotte Gilbert. That car will remain stationary for 80 seconds come the pit stop, because Tom Rawlings is a pro sporting driver, so that's why it stops longer. Third in the race is Seamus Jennings. When he gives way to Greg Caton, that'll be 60 seconds in the race. Fourth in the race is Paul Bailey. Well, David Brabham is still classed as a pro driver, so 85 seconds the Lamborghini will remain stationary. Fifth in the race is Miles Rudman. Well, he's driving solo. He's an AM, so 60 seconds for him. In sixth place, starting from the pit lane, Jay Shepherd in the Lotus. He's made good progress. We haven't really seen much of that yet, but he's made the progress away from our cameras. 60 seconds when he stops in the pit lane. Jodie Sloss will give way to Rihanna O'Meara Hunt. 80 seconds for the Group GTH leading Aston Martin when it stops in the pit lane, and the sister car to it will also stop for an 80 seconds as well when Matt Higgins gives way to Mikey Porter. Chris Murphy, number 72, the BMW in 9th place, 60 seconds when he stops in the pit lane, but the number 31 Mercedes, when Charles Dawson gives way to Seb Morris. Seb's a pro, so that will stop for 85 seconds in the pit lane. 11th place, number 69, which is Stephen Walton giving way to Chris Hart, 60 seconds in the pit lane. John Curry, the sister car, the 96, when he gives way to Phil Keane. Well, Phil Keane is a pro, so that will remain in the pit lane for 85 seconds when that car pits. 13th place, number 11, Jake Poole giving way to Michael Arantz. That will be 60 seconds in the pit lane. James Townsend giving way to Leana Theobald in the Ginetta. That will be 60 seconds as well. Keith Bush is on his own, number 75, in 15th place, 60 seconds in the pit lane. And the sole remaining car, when Rupert Williams gives way to John Ingram, the pro sporting driver, that remains stationary for 18 seconds in the pit lane. So that's the amount of time they should, in theory, be stationary in the pit lane, plus the 18 seconds it takes to drive through the pit lane at the pit lane speed limit. Add the two together, that gives you the amount of time from breaking the beam at pit lane into breaking the beam at pit lane out. If you're any shorter than that, then race control know you've done one of two things. You've either not stopped for the requisite amount of time, or you've sped in the pit lane, one or the other. And either one of those will mean you're going to get a penalty. You've got to be in that pit lane area for the amount of time, which for any single car is going to be 60 seconds plus 18 to drive down the pit lane. Minimum, absolute minimum of 78 seconds. And in the case of those cars which have pros behind the wheel, then it will be what, 85 plus 18, so it's going to be 103 seconds, isn't it, from pit in to pit out. Quick bit of maths there. So we're still 11.5 minutes away from pit window opening anyway. This hopefully will be the last lap behind the safety car. Leading Group GTO is the overall race leader. In second place is Charlotte Gilbert. She leads Group GTC. The Group GT3 leading car is the car in third place, which is Seamus Jennings. And Group GTH is being led by Jodie Sloss. So plenty of wildlife here at Donington Park. Wagtail busy feeding away. We had the GCAT Racing Porsche hit a hare in the race earlier on today. Caused a bit of damage to the Porsche. Fair to say that the hare suffered a bit more damage. Now, are we going to see the lights extinguished on the safety car this time through? So, wouldn't surprise me if they go out this time. Yes, they do. So, safety car will be in at the end of this lap. So, it's now up to Ian Loggy to dictate the pace. Last little bit of weaving, accelerating and braking being done by the cars behind. Charlotte Gilbert is keen to get on with it. She leads Group GTC and has a couple of cars buffer before the next Group GCC car. But it's a restart from Ian Loggy, who gets the sprint away. Paul Bailey is a little bit slower to react, so the top three get away. Then there's a bit more of a gap before we sign Paul Bailey, who is instantly back under pressure from Miles Rudman. So Miles Rudman has sort of picked up where he left off, really, which is hounding the Lamborghini of Paul Bailey, the black car with the day-glow flashes. And for Paul Bailey, he'll be quite happy to keep Miles Rudman behind him, because that Porsche of Miles Rudman is the Group GTC car. Look behind Miles Rudman and Jay Shepherd making progress. All right, is that going to be a change for the leader Group GTH? It is. Jodie Sloss outbrakes herself, and the sister car from Forsetti Motorsport goes through. So Matthew Higgins picks up the lead of Group GTH now. So the two Aston Martins have reversed the order. Jodie was just a bit too deep going in towards Redgate Corner. Couldn't quite get the car stopped and turned in. And as a result, lost momentum on the way out of the corner, and that has also lost to the lead of Group GTH. Only one single place loss, but it was an important one, from 7th down to 8th. The two Morpheus Racing Mercedes are still together, but Ian Loggy has got back on with the job in hand once more, and is looking to try and open up a gap between himself and Charlotte Gilbert. Remember, 3 different group cars inside the top 3. I think I said earlier on today that the Mercedes running in Group GTO was an unrestricted Mercedes. I was corrected earlier on. No, it's still got all of the restrictions on it, so it's fully compliant with GT3. It's just the team have opted to move it to GTO for this weekend. Now, Charles Dawson is putting in a good stint here. Jodie Sloss, having just lost the lead of Group GTH, is now under pressure from the Mercedes that lies behind. We've also got the two Morpheus Mercedes coming under pressure from the Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura in the hands of Jake Poole, and not far off them is the Ginetta of James Townsend as well. So that's 11th, 12th and 13th together, with the 14th place Ginetta not far away. Charles Dawson, though, at the wheel of the Team Parker Racing Mercedes, is hot on the heels of Jodie Sloss, who lost the lead of Group GTH a lap or so ago. Already pulling away for her now is Matthew Higgins in the sister car. Jodie will not want to lose a further place, but she's got Charles Dawson queuing up behind her at this stage. Now this is an important battle, because this will be 2nd and 3rd in Group GTO at this stage. Paul Bailey coming under pressure from the National Motorsport Academy Lotus. Jay Shepherd, can he do anything on the run down in toward Redgate Corner? No, I don't think he can. He's too far away. So we're following the Pirelli wheel tracks of the Lamborghini through Redgate. So Paul Bailey, having been picked off by Miles Rudman's Porsche a lap or so ago, is now potentially going to get picked off by Jay Shepherd. Miles Rudman, having got past that Lamborghini, is already starting to gap it. So the reigning champion, running 2nd in Group GTO, is going to have to put in a bit of a shift here. It was a good squabble, wasn't it, in race number 1, if you watched it, between Paul Bailey and the Group GTC Lamborghini of Warren Gilbert. They were having a good chat to each other about the fun battle they were having in race number 1 when I saw them in the garages earlier on. But Paul Bailey will not be thinking about race number 1 at the moment. It's what he's doing here. He'll want to make sure he hangs on to 2nd in Group GTO. But Jay Shepherd again just shows the nose of the Lotus to the Lamborghini. But the Kendall Developments Lamborghini still hangs on to the place at this stage. And you can see now that Paul Bailey's lap time slower than Miles Rudman ahead, and slower than Jay Shepherd that sits behind at the moment. Not by much, but just by enough. So remember, when there's 26 minutes remaining on the clock, that is the earliest at which a car can enter the pit lane if it's in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC. And if it's a Group GTH car, it can only come in when there's a maximum of 21 minutes remaining on the clock. So there's still a bit of time to go yet before we see the pit window open. Now, last lap through, Ian Loggy, race leader, new fastest lap of the race. 1 minute 6.815 from Ian Loggy last time through. Means that the lead advantage is hovering around 2.4 seconds when he came over the start-finish line. Still got Charlotte Gilbert doing a brilliant job there in the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini. She's just about managing to keep the Group GT3 Porsche of Seamus Jennings behind. That's the GCAT Racing Porsche in the hands of the Northern Irishman. And then it's Miles Rudman in his Group GTC Porsche. And then it's the battle of the Group GTO cars. Now that lap again, another new fastest lap from Ian Loggy. He goes even quicker, 1 minute 6.347 that time through for Ian Loggy. So that will more than please him. There are extra points available for the fastest lap of the race. Subject to the number of starters in the group. We've got extra laps available, extra points available, I think, for fastest lap of the race, which is 1 extra point. Now, Charlotte Gilbert to Seamus Jennings, you can see the relative lap times that they put in. Seamus Jennings has been edging up towards Charlotte Gilbert. She's been slower over the last 3 consecutive laps. Again, not by much, only by a tenth here, a couple of tenths there. But the gap has come down, and in a straight line, the Lamborghini probably has the edge because it's a Super Trofeo spec car over the Porsche. But the Porsche, because it's a GT3 spec car, will have the aero through the corners. Big wiggle from both at corner exit there coming out of Roberts. Staying neatly out of the way is Rupert Williams, making his debut in the GT Cup this weekend. The man who lives up in the Cotswolds. So through Redgate corner, down through the Craner curves. Good fight still going on for second and for third place. Group GTC Lamborghini ahead of Group GT3 Porsche. Now for Charlotte Gilbert, she'll hand over to Tom Rawlings for the second part of the race, but that is a pro sporting driver, so the Lamborghini will stop in the pit lane for 85 seconds. When Seamus Jennings give way to Greg Caton, the Porsche will stop for just 60 seconds in the pit lane. So Seamus Jennings will know that it's not absolutely critical for him to get by the Lamborghini because they should leapfrog it come the pit stops. So out of Coppice Corner, along Starkey Straight, or the Exhibition Straight, whichever you wish to call it. So it's not an official name. It's been known as both. Now, second and third in Group GTH, still at it at this stage. Jodie Sloss doing a really good job of hanging on to second in Group GTH, despite the fact that she's got Charles Dawson breathing down the neck of the Fossetti Motorsport Aston Martin. Chris Murphy's not too far away either at the wheel of his Group GTC BMW M3 GTR, the E46 variant. Jodie all over the curbs, trying to get as much momentum coming off the corner as she can. Aston Martin against Mercedes, and such is the way that the balance of performance is done. There's not a great deal to choose between the cars regardless of the mark, and Jodie Sloss just gets across the nose of Charles Dawson, who I thought might have a slight overlap there, but good driving from both. Still sees the order as it was. Chris Murphy will be enjoying this. He's got the best seat in the house, isn't he, watching this squabble for second and third in Group GTH. It's actually for it's actually for 8th and 9th overall. Chris Murphy and the BMW completing the top 10 at this stage. And we're getting close towards the pit window opening now. Between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race is when it opens for those cars running at the front. For these cars that we're watching now, the Aston Martin and the Mercedes, they have to wait until slightly later on in the race. Again, Charles Dawson had another little nibble going in towards Coppice Corner, but having a nibble on the way in has meant that he's a little bit slower on the way out, and Mal might have to give second best to Chris Murphy on the run down in towards the Robert chicane. All of the time whilst our race leader, Ian Loggy, just keeps going quicker and quicker and quicker. 1 minute 5.741 from him last time through. Now this is another battle. This is all Group GTH. Every year Group GTH is like this in GT Cup. What we've got there is Stephen Walton fighting away with John Curry, and then a big wiggle from Jake Poole as Charles Dawson does dive up the inside of Jodie Sloss and move up to second in Group GTH with a great move in the Team Parker Racing Mercedes heading in towards Redgate Corner. Jodie Sloss now down into third in Group GTH. That is going to put her in 9th place overall. And then this other gaggle, a quartet of Group GTH cars, which includes Jake Poole, who's carved his way past John Curry on that lap, and James Townsend is trying to follow through at the wheel of the Ginetta as well. in his 100th Ginetta race, trying to squeeze his way through and past John Curry in the second of the Morpheus racing cars. Couldn't quite do it. Jake Poole did manage, though, at the wheel of the Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura, the former Caterham racer. Now, Jake Poole is partnered up with Michael Arant, former Sporadic Ginetta Academy racer. Miles Rudman's still got his hands full as well. Miles Rudman had got away from Paul Bailey, hadn't he? The Lamborghini had been overtaken by the Porsche, but Paul Bailey has worked his way back through and ahead of Miles Rudman, and now Miles Rudman is acting as the meat in the sandwich between the two Group GTO cars, the Lamborghini ahead and the Lotus that sits behind. So this is going to be a fight for 4th, 5th and 6th between those. Rupert Williams in the 570S McLaren stays out of the way as the newer Artura, the Mercedes and the Ginetta G56 all go through. They continually squabble for their little battle. And James Townsend as yet hasn't been able to unpick John Curry. So let's just have a quick look and see whether he's going to do anything at the old hairpin. No, he's not. Not really an overtaking spot, the old hairpin. It's a very, very quick corner, actually. Car ahead makes a mistake, you can squeeze by it on the way out, but you really need to, if you want to overtake it, you need to be running side by side down through the crane of curves to get the inside line into towards the old hairpin, otherwise it's so difficult to overtake. Fantastic noise the Mercedes and the Ginetta make. Now we might start to see a few cars trickle their way into the pit lane before too much longer, because for those in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC, the clock's telling me that the pit window should be open for them now, so they may well opt to come into the pits at the end of this lap. So let's wait and see as to whether we do have any takers for the pit lane this time through. Pit lane looks fairly empty at the moment. Is the race leader coming in? No, Ian Logie stays with it. He's got a bit of traffic ahead though, but he does have enough of a gap so as not to worry at the moment, because the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes continues to lead. Charlotte Gilbert's Top Cats Racing Lamborghini is there in second place, but the gap first to second is now 12.6 seconds between the two of them. And the relative lap times of both are there. Now we do have some takers for the pit lane, so Charlotte Gilbert is into the pit lane. Seamus Jennings in the third place Porsche comes into the pit lane. Paul Bailey, the reigning champion, is in at the wheel of the Group GTO Lamborghini. And also Jay Shepherd, who started from the pit lane, has just brought the Lotus in as well. So that means that Miles Rudman now is going to be running second in the race overall at the wheel of his Porsche, because he did not pit, and neither did Ian Logie, of course, our race leader. And of course, for those cars that are running in Group GTH, they can't pit yet. Their pit window does not open for at least another 3 and a bit minutes at the moment. So a flash of the lights from Ian Logie. He works his way alongside James Townsend's Ginetta G56. Up the inside of the Ginetta he goes. And is the Team ABBA Mercedes going to dive for the pit lane this time through? Yes, it does. So into the pit lane will come Ian Logie. Chris Murphy is in as well at the wheel of the BMW. I can see that in the pit lane. Now, they all park at 45 degrees for safety reasons. It then means that the teams have to push the car back, so they don't park parallel to the garage. So Miles Rudman picks up the lead of the race, but he's going to dive for the pit lane as well. So I think that's all of the cars that could have pitted, other than Doc Bush, that have now pitted. So yeah, he's the only car, I think, that is eligible to come in under this pit window that hasn't as yet chosen to, the number 75 Porsche in the hands of the former motorcycle racer. So coming to a halt now comes the Team Parker Racing prepared Porsche of Miles Rudman. Those that pitted the lap prior are all now leaving the pit lane. In the background of the shot you can see that Paul Bailey has vacated the black and Dayglow yellow Lamborghini. So that now means that for the first time ever in GT Cup, David Brabham is about to head out onto the circuit. Champion in the American Le Mans Series, champion in Japanese GT, champion in British Formula 3, 3 wins at Le Mans. He won at the Bathurst 1000. He was a winner at Macau in Formula 3 as well. And of course did have that sporadic season or so, the very difficult season that he would have had in Formula 1. Of course, as teammates to Roland Ratzenberger in Simtek. So trundling down the pit lane, now comes Richard Neary, having taken over the car from Ian Logie. His strong-looking partnership for this year. Two drivers that know each other well, know the Mercedes well as well, with Ian Logie having secured championships in a Mercedes GT3 car, the same as Richard Neary has. They've both done double campaigns with both British GT and GT Cup in the past as well. So they are an am-am pairing, two drivers that have, in the case of Ian Logie, a very successful packaging business. In the case of Richard Neary, a very successful commercial vehicle bodybuilding business. So they race for fun at weekends, but when I say fun, they take it seriously. They want to win, and they're very good at it as well. So they do look a strong pairing for this year. Right, back to GTH. Stephen Walton still doing a good job of trying to keep young Jake Poole behind him. Stephen Walton giving away a few years to Jake Poole, but can draw on all of that experience that he's got. Jake Poole hasn't been racing cars that long, really, and is doing a really good job of acquitting himself with the new machinery. The McLaren Artura, a new car that was introduced by McLaren at the beginning of the 2023 championship season, replacing the outgoing 570S, and certainly a beautiful looking car. Maybe doesn't have quite the same noise as the Mercedes has, but is equally as quick. And at the moment, in the hands of Jake Poole, is trying to hunt down the lead of Group GTH. Now, these are cars that at the moment are running 4th and 5th in Group GTH. But Jake Poole, when he gives way to Michael Arant, that car will only stop for 60 seconds. As will the Mercedes that lies ahead of him, but all the other cars in Group GTH will stop for longer. That's why I'm saying he's trying to hunt down the lead, because by the time we've cycled through the pit stops, potentially, this could be for the lead of Group GTH. Right, Stephen Walton's going to come in. Jake Poole is going to come in. Already in is Jody Sloss to give way to Rihanna O'Meara Hunt, but that's a pro sporting combination, so they'll stop for 20 seconds longer than the two cars entering the pit lane now. Seb Morris will stop for 25 seconds longer when Charles Dawson has come in and handed the car over to him. And the car that continues to lead Group GTH, Matthew Higgins, when he hands over to Mikey Porter, that car will also stop for 20 seconds longer. So into the pits, out jumps Stephen Walton. In will go Chris Hart. That's the driver pairing that secured top honours in Group GTH last year. Morpheus Racing also finished second in the team standings. The sister car to it, the 96, vacated by John Curry, now taken over by Phil Keane. Multiple winner and multiple runner-up in the British GT Championship. Also raced out in Daytona in the 24-hour for Action Express in the Rolex 24 a few seasons ago. That car finished second in the Group GTH standings last year. And the Morpheus team pit together. So David Brabham out on track. Hopefully we'll see David Brabham in the Brabham, the BT62, later on in the season, but it's the Kendall Developments Lamborghini that he's taken over from Paul Bailey. And the race out of the pits is going to see, by the look of things, Rihanna O'Meara Hunt exit the pit lane just ahead of the Morpheus Racing Mercedes, which is trying to overtake it at pit lane exit. In the meantime, I think Greg Caton's flashing his lights because he can see that as cars are exiting the pit lane at the wheel of his GT3 Porsche, he's going to be quicker than them. He'll carry more momentum, and of course, he's a new driver only just taking over. A bit later leaving than all the rest was the number 96 car, now in the hands of Phil Keane, because Phil's the pro driver, so they stop for 85 seconds in the pit lane area. So Group GTH at the moment was still being led by Matthew Higgins because he hadn't pitted. He has now come into the pits, and he's going to hand it over to Mikey Porter. Now, depending on when the number 9 Aston Martin feeds back out of the pit lane, is it going to feed out ahead or in the middle of that pack of cars? It looks so it's just exiting pit lane now. Leona Theobald has now taken over the Ginetta from James Townsend. So that's about to be released by SVG Motorsport out onto the circuit. So Rihanna O'Meara Hunt at the moment looking to see whether she's going to come out in the lead of Group GTH or second place, and I think it might be second. It could even be third. I don't think Leona Theobald's quite going to get out of the pit lane in time. No, not quite, but the battle is on in Group GTH. Seb Morris sticking his elbows out, trying to keep the number 69 car of Chris Hart behind, who's also experienced in driving GT3 spec Mercedes. Had a couple of sporadic outings in GT3 cars last year. At the moment he's got Seb Morris just ahead. Seb wiggling the car, working hard at the wheel of the Team Parker Racing prepared Mercedes. And we'll give you a full rundown of the order then. So the number 6 Mercedes leads the way, Richard Neary on board. In second place is the number 33 Porsche of Greg Caton. Third is number 7, which is Jay Shepherd, going really well at the wheel of the Lotus. Remember, that car started from the pit lane. Fourth place is the Group GTC leading car, the Lamborghini now in the hands of Tom Rawlings, the number 2 car. Fifth is number 12, Miles Rudman. Sixth is number 1, which is David Brabham. Seventh is going to be Chris Murphy at the wheel of the number 72 BMW. And 8th place will be the leading car in Group GTH at the moment, which is the number 9 car in the hands of Mikey Porter. 9th and 10th is what we're looking at on track at the moment, which is Rihanna O'Meara Hunt just managing to keep at bay the aspirations of Seb Morris at the wheel of the number 31 Mercedes. And then not far off that is Chris Hart, who is just outside of the top 10 at the moment. So good squabble going on for second and for third in Group GTH. I think everybody has now conducted their pit stops. And the only one car we've lost so far was the unfortunate Jensen Lum. So that was way back on lap number 5. We're now on lap number 27. Fastest lap of the race has just been popped in by Greg Caton at the wheel of the Porsche. And as I say that, there's the commentator's curse. First time this season in GT Cup. I said we'd only lost one car. I think we're going to lose 2, because the body language of that Lotus is telling you that Jay Shepherd isn't much more for this race. It's trickling its way down in towards the braking area for the old hairpin. Now, whether there was an issue with the car that caused it to start from the pit lane in the first place, I don't know, but Jay Shepherd is going to park the car right on the outside of the circuit. Had he have pulled off on the grass down through the crane of Kerrs, we might have been able to avert a safety car, but I do fear with where that car has come to a halt that we might have to go back to a controlled status in this race. Seb Morris looking to get the overlap on Rihanna O'Meara Hunt, and yeah, saw that the Aston Martin was maybe going in a little bit too deep. He turned it a bit later to get the undercut on the way out, and Seb Morris goes through, gains the place just as the safety car comes out, and moves up into what will be 9th position and 2nd in Group GTH. Now that could be quite critical that he's just moved his way to 2nd in Group GTH, because the safety car will catch the pack. It will bunch them all up. It hasn't quite got the race leader behind it at the moment, but that will be sorted, I'm sure. And of course, what that now means is that Seb Morris, who would have been about 10 seconds shy of the car that was leading Group GTH, well, that 10 seconds is all going to evaporate to nothing, because the safety car will bunch them all up, and potentially at the restart, the number 31 Mercedes will be hot on the heels of the number 9 Aston Martin in the hands of Mikey Porter. So that was a very well-timed overtake for Seb Morris there, just before the safety car came out. So, all right, Jay Shepherd's on the move again. Right, okay, so the safety car comes out because Jay Shepherd was stricken, and Jay has probably done a Alt Control and Delete and reset something on the Lotus, and all of a sudden, the car is on the move again. Now, you could argue what Jay ought to do is come into the pit lane and get the car checked out, but if it all seems to be working, there's no reason to do that. Jay could just crack on again. Now, he's already lost time with it breaking down on track. If he's happy that all is good with the car, carry on in the race. And that's exactly what Jay is doing. So I'm not surprised. What the safety car will now need to do is wave past everybody until it gets the race leader behind it. So it might be another lap or so before we're able to go green, because the car that's behind the safety car is David Brabham at the moment. So David would need to be waved by. Also the Morpheus Racing car, which is Phil Keane, would need to be waved by. So through goes David Brabham, through goes Phil Keane, and now Richard Neary is the race leader, is behind the safety car. So those cars that have been waved by now need to speed up and catch up. So literally they've got to do an extra lap from where they are all the way around to catch up on the back of the train before we can go back green flag racing. So that might take, certainly this lap, might mean one more thereafter. We'll have to wait and see. I'm just trying to look as to, is there another lapped car between the leaders in Group GTH? No, there won't be. Yeah, I can see the Aston Martin there of Mikey Porter, and right behind him is the Mercedes of Seb Morris, and then just behind that is going to be Rihanna O'Meara Hunt. So first, second and third in Group GTH will all be together at the restart. Just off that is Chris Hart, who is fourth in Group GTH. And then there's then an interloping car thereafter, which will be one of the 2 Top Cats Racing Lamborghinis before we go back to Group GTH cars once more. So yeah, I think we need to, certainly the restart of this race, keep an eye on what's going on at the sharp end of Group GTH. And the other really good thing for our race leader, Richard Neary, is that he's got lapped cars between himself and the Greg Caton driven number 33 Porsche. And of course, you know, when we go back to green flag running, Richard Neary is in reality in control of the restart of this race. So lights are off on the safety car. So Richard Neary can go for it now if he wants, because Greg Caton cannot overtake any of the cars ahead of him until they've got to the start-finish line. So if I were Richard Neary, I'd be gunning it about now, I think, just to try and build a big old advantage, because you've got certainly some slower cars behind. And there we go, 2 backmarker cars between Greg Caton and Richard Neary. And Greg Caton can't overtake either Chris Murphy or the car of John Ingram until the start-finish line. So there goes Richard Neary, and then in the background, watch out, with its lights ablaze, the Porsche will try and carve its way past Chris Murphy. A flash of the lights. Watch out for what's going on in Group GTH in the background, because Mikey Porter is coming under pressure from Seb Morris. Seb trying around the outside at Redgate Corner. That's not quite going to work. He was almost run a little bit wide there by Mikey Porter. They're also breathing down the neck of Chris Murphy as well, and this is 4th position, so Chris Murphy in the BMW, no need for him to move out of the way, because they are fighting for position. Chris is running in Group GTC, but he's got a queue of Group GTH cars lining up behind him at this stage. Murphy's 7th, Mikey Porter's 8th, Seb Morris is 9th, Rhiannon O'Meara Hunt is there next up. And for Chris Murphy, yeah, he doesn't want to almost interrupt the battle in Group GTH, but he wants to finish as high as he possibly can, so why should he move out the way? He's on the same lap, and it is 4th position. So it looks as though it's a reasonable restart from everybody. Here is Chris Murphy. So he's in 6th place. Mikey Porter's in 7th place. Seb Morris, you can hardly see him because the Mercedes is so close to the back of the Aston Martin. Mikey Porter covers off the move from Seb Morris, so they're still going to be nose to tail in towards the Roberts chicane. The GT4 cars carry a bit more momentum coming out of the corner than Chris Murphy. And Mikey Porter's trying to prise the door open on Chris Murphy, but the BMW in a straight line has got a bit more advantage. Up towards Redgate Corner, Seb Morris up the inside of Mikey Porter for the lead of Group GTH. Is the Mercedes going to go through? They lean on each other coming out of the corner, and it looks as though there was almost a little bit of contact there as they came out of the corner. They are still side by side all the way through Hollywood, down through the Craner curves, and Seb Morris, I think, backs out of it there and thought, right, not quite going to happen. There'll be another opportunity in the next 10 minutes, so I'll follow Mikey Porter through the old hairpin and have a nibble elsewhere. Brilliant stuff between the pair of them. We've got the Top Cats Racing Group GTC Lamborghini sitting behind as well. Can't quite tell which one of the 2 that is. It's the number 2 car by the look of things, which will be Tom Rawlings now. So that's the car that runs in 3rd place overall. Tom returning to the GT Cup Championship, where he raced a McLaren a couple of seasons ago. Draws himself alongside Seb Morris in a straight line, draws himself alongside Mikey Porter in a straight line. So that's the number 3 car that's now placed a lap on those. So for Mikey Porter and Seb Morris, right, roll the sleeves up again. Here we go. We can crack back on with it again now. Yes, we've still got Chris Murphy ahead, but for the lead of Group GTH, Seb Morris, this time he's going to try the outside line, is he? Or is he going to try that undercut that he got worked on Jody Sloss earlier? But no, Mikey Porter prepared for the undercut on the way out of the corner, covers it off. So it's still Aston Martin for the lead of Group GTH. Seb Morris still 2nd in Group GTH. If those 2 slip up at all, then Rhiannon O'Meara Hunt, the Kiwi, is poised and ready to scoot her way through as well to pick up the lead of the group, because she is the 2nd of the 2 Aston Martins, and lying 3rd in Group GTH. And if you look just off that, you've then got Chris Hart at the wheel of the Morpheus racing car. Chris Murphy has got Mikey Porter on the outside of him. Seb Morris is going to want to try and squeeze his way through as well. The 2 of them want to stay together for the lead of Group GTH. So Chris Murphy, absolutely, he's entitled to do this. They are fighting for overall position in the race. And they are still side by side as they come out of Coppice this time through. In a straight line, the Beamer's got more grunt, but we know the GT4 cars carry a bit more corner speed, and Seb Morris up the inside this time of Mikey Porter picks up the lead of Group GTH. So it's the Mercedes that now leads the group. Every year, Group GTH is the hardest fought group in GT Cup. Some of the racing since it was introduced, 5-6 years ago, has been fantastic, and year on year it's delivering. Miles Rudman running 4th overall in the race is now amongst them as well, trying to place a lap on everybody. The grey and gold liveried car in the hands of the 3 times UK Legend champion is the next car that's going to briefly interrupt the battle between Mikey Porter and Seb Morris for the lead of the group. Chris Murphy still doing a really good job at the wheel of the somewhat elderly E46 now, isn't it really? By far the oldest car we've got in the field, with the absence of Richard Chamberlain in his Porsche this weekend. Jay Shepherd's car, the Lotus, seems to be going fine again as well all of a sudden, albeit he is now a couple of laps off the lead. But for the lead of Group GTH, Seb Morris and Mikey Porter have put on a bit of a show. Seb Morris has already had a good start to the 2024 season himself and Charles Dawson, having claimed wins at Alton Park in the British GT Championship. Mikey Porter equally as much had a solid Alton Park in British GT. But here they're getting fully stuck into the GT Cup this weekend. Now Miles Rudman is going to work the Porsche through and past Mikey Porter to place a lap upon it, and was sensibly patient in doing so. He now needs to try and see where he might be able to pick off Seb Morris to place a lap on him. So the Porsche and the Mercedes not racing for position because Miles Rudman is a full lap ahead. Through the old hairpin, 6 minutes still remaining. Greg Caton with another new fastest lap of the race. He's now lowered the fastest lap to a 1 minute 4.235, and the problems have started again for Jay Shepherd, and they've started at exactly the same point. So I think if Jay wants to keep some friends again, if the car is faltering, get it out of the way and park it up right. It seems as though it might have a little bit of motive power actually, so he'll probably just keep trundling. Yep, there you go, all of a sudden it's fine again. So it's an intermittent fault, isn't it, clearly, with the car. And Miles Rudman here about to get overtaken by David Brabham, and that will be for position. So the Group GTO Lamborghini that was in the hands of Paul Bailey earlier when it was having a good fight with Miles Rudman is now in the hands of David Brabham, and is still enjoying a good little squabble. So David Brabham places a lap on Chris Murphy. Miles Rudman might try and place a lap on Chris Murphy's BMW as they come out of Hollywood. Seb Morris still trying to fight off Mikey Porter for the lead of Group GTH as well. The Mercedes just ahead of the Aston Martin. Absolutely nothing to choose between them. They're almost side by side coming into the corner. Mikey Porter trying to get a better exit coming out of it to see whether he can lock the door to get the lead of Group GTH back once more. Seb Morris, I think, will make sure he's got the inside line when they get up towards McLean's corner. And yet they are still absolutely rooted together, aren't they, the pair of them? And then all of a sudden they've caught back up with Chris Murphy's BMW, which was the thorn in their side earlier on. But as I say, Chris is ahead of them in the race, and it is for position, so why should he let the Group GTH cars through? So Mikey Porter, is he going to try anything in towards the braking area? No, he's not. He's going to sit behind Seb Morris, try and make sure that he gets a really nice exit coming out of the corner. Seb can't afford to be compromised by the BMW of the car ahead, and into the pit lane comes Mikey Porter. Now, is that a problem, or is that some sort of drive-through penalty? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because into the pit lane he's come. There's no suggestion on anything that I've got in front of me that that was a short pit stop. Ah, right, there we go. So drive-through penalty. Pit lane speeding was the problem. Oh, such a shame for Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter. Don't know whether it's speeding on the way in or speeding on the way out. Now, they are right at the pit lane entry end, Forseti Motorsport. So whether it was Matthew Higgins didn't hit the pit lane speed limit in time coming in, or whether it was Mikey Porter was a bit keen going out, I simply don't know. But one of the two has clearly sped in the pit lane, and I'm afraid for safety reasons, you go beyond the pit lane speed limit, you pick up a penalty. So that now means that the sister car of Jodie Sloss and Rihanna O'Meara Hunt picks up second in Group GTH, and this now is for the lead of the race. All of a sudden Richard Neary has been caught by Greg Caton, who I did say a while ago had set the fastest lap of the race, and the two of them are absolutely at it. Jay Shepherd at the wheel of the Lotus is ahead. Hopefully he'll get out of the way, because his car obviously has had a few problems. Sensible driving by Jay, doesn't want to get involved, doesn't want to upset the lead battle. And with 3 minutes to go, we are in for a grandstand finish in our first pit stop race of the 2024 GT Cup Championship season. Ian Loggy did the hard work in the Mercedes early on in the race to hand it over to Richard Neary. Seamus Jennings kept the Porsche in touch with the front runners to hand it over to Greg Caton. The two of them stopped in the pit lane for the same amount of time, 60 seconds, so it goes to show the equalisation of the cars and the abilities of the drivers are all pretty matched, because here we are, what, 47 minutes into the race, and we've got nothing for the lead of the race at all. Richard Neary ran a little bit wide there coming out of Redgate corner. Is that the opportunity for Greg Caton to squeeze his way through? No is the answer. He can't do anything about it as they go through Hollywood and down in towards the old hairpin this time through. But maybe the catalyst for a bit of change is just up the road, which is some back marker traffic that is still running side by side, and that is not what Richard Neary wants to see at the moment, because he can't afford to lose a split second when he's got the GCAT Racing Porsche sitting firmly on his bumper. So through the right-hander at Coppice Corner, I think it's possibly Phil Keane, is it, that is behind the wheel of the Morpheus Racing Mercedes. Phil will see them coming and get out of the way. Mikey Porter will see them coming and try and get out of the way. Now Greg Caton's got to go through. He can't afford a back marker between the pair of them, and Mikey Porter equally as much doesn't want to lift off, and Greg Caton, I'm afraid, was wrong place, wrong time. They couldn't quite fully clear the back marker in time. Mikey Porter didn't want to lose any time to the car behind, but Greg Caton didn't want to lose any time to the race leader. They all got away with it. It was rather close. And now we've only got a minute and a half to go, so they're on to their penultimate lap of the race this time through, and that little bit of breathing space that Richard Neary needed, he's found through the traffic. But Greg Caton, latter stages of this race, has been the quicker of the two to hunt down the gap, close the gap, catch the race leader, to put himself in a position to take the lead of the race, for it to be briefly taken away by the traffic. So up towards McLean's corner, one further lap to go. I'm sure some more traffic as well that may well need to be dealt with on the final lap of the race, but where are they going to meet it? So out of Coppice Corner, down the straight. I don't think Richard Neary's got any more traffic that he's going to meet on this lap, but he will need to clear the traffic down the Wheatcroft straight, and hopefully before Redgate Corner will be the ideal for him. Onto the brakes, through the right, through the left, accelerate their way over the start-finish line. The thundering noise of the Mercedes compared to the six-cylinder Porsche that lies behind. Now here comes Greg Caton, showing the nose to Richard Neary. Next to the cars just up the road is going to be Doc Bush at the wheel of his Team Parker Racing Group GTC car. And now we've also got, by the look of things, David Brabham about to potentially finish on the overall podium, because he's just worked his way through and ahead of Tom Rawlings, who continues to lead Group GTC, but lets the car that's second in Group GTO go through David Brabham. So 6 seconds to go. This is the last lap of the race. Michael Arant is the next of the back markers that this leading pair are going to get to. Now, can Richard Neary clear him before Coppice Corner? He can't afford to be compromised through Coppice Corner. He's not going to clear him in time, but I don't think he's going to be compromised through Coppice Corner, so he should be able to get a clean exit off it, which is exactly what he wanted. And now as they head up towards the final corner, it's now or never for Greg Caton, who draws the Porsche alongside, but he's on the outside line, heading in towards the braking area for the Robert chicane. The nose of the Mercedes dips. He gets turned in towards the corner. Richard Neary, he gets cleanly off the corner, but there's a wiggle coming off the corner, and Greg Caton has more opportunity to draw himself alongside and take the win by 1/10 of a second. Greg Caton, what a way to open up our pit stop racing season in the GT Cup Championship. Brilliant racing between Greg Caton and Richard Neary, and fair play to both of them. Hard fought racing, and well, Richard Neary just was very slightly compromised by trying to get past the traffic, which meant he couldn't quite get the exit coming off the Robert chicane that he needed to. And Greg Caton sneaks the win in the first of the pit stop races for himself and Seamus Jennings and GCAT Racing by just 1/10 of a second. Brilliant stuff. Absolutely superb. David Brabham will finish on the overall podium. Himself and Paul Bailey will be delighted with that. It's going to be a win in Group GTC for Charlotte Gilbert and Tom Rawlings, and Group GTH did go the way of Charles Dawson and Seb Morris, or should go the way of Charles Dawson and Seb Morris. They haven't as yet taken the checkered flag, but they do now as they go through over the start-finish line. But wow, didn't expect it to build to a crescendo like that, and it goes to show the format works, doesn't it? You know, the Mercedes is running in Group GTO, but it is still fully compliant with GT3, so it is an identical spec car in reality to the Porsche, but you had a different manufacturer, you know, a V8 engine, a 6-cylinder engine, 4 different drivers, you equalise the performance of everything, and there you go, the race win 1/10 of a second. 0.146 was the winning margin in the end. So all of the cars have taken the checkered flag. We should hopefully be able to guide you through the results for what was a fascinating first pit stop race of the season. Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton claim the win in the GCAT Racing Porsche. Look at the lead margin in the end between themselves and Richard Neary and Ian Loggy, who finish in second place. Paul Bailey and David Brabham were third, and in fourth place it was a win in Group GTC for Charlotte Gilbert and Tom Rawlings. Miles Rudman came home in fifth place, and sixth was the winners of Group GTH, Charles Dawson and Seb Morris. Chris Murphy had a busy race in seventh place. Jodie Sloss and Rihanna O'Meara Hunt finished in eighth place. Then it was Stephen Walton and Chris Hart in ninth, and Michael Arant and Jake Poole making their GT Cup debut finish in 10th place. Doc Bush was in 11th place. In 12th place with that drive-through penalty with Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter. Jay Shepherd in the troubled Lotus finished 2 laps adrift in the end. Oh, what could have been for them in 13th position. John Curry and Phil Keane were 14th. James Townsend and Leona Theobald 15th. And 16th was Rupert Williams and John Ingram. Of course, we lost very early on Jason Lum at the wheel of the Radical. Hopefully, whatever the problem is, they'll be sorted and they'll be back out tomorrow. But what a way to finish our first day of racing in the 2024 GT Cup Championship. We've got it all to do again tomorrow, and the format has changed for 2024. So our first race tomorrow will be the pit stop race that will be taking place tomorrow, and we'll have our sprint race later on in the afternoon. We are scheduled to get our first race underway at around about 12:25 tomorrow, which means on the live stream it'll be about 12:15, no doubt, when we go live. So thanks for joining us for our first day of racing in 2024 in the GT Cup. Have a good evening. We'll catch you all tomorrow from Donington Park. It's goodbye.